the sea route actually got a lot further. So DNA reflects a westward movement of people from the Near East 9,000 years ago, especially from Turkey, spreading early paganism as it went, leapfrogging on the ocean thing, from island to island across the northern Mediterranean. And the Neolithic people were able to thus quickly spread their farming lifestyle across Europe. And the genetics suggest this. So it seems that after individuals in the Near East developed farming around 12,000 years ago, seemingly almost the same time that goddesses are invented, and they relate to a transfer of this new agricultural religion, or early paganism. So the genetics express the people from the Near East into Turkey, and then rapidly through that to the islands of Greece, Sicily, making their way north to the center of the continent. People living in central Turkey today, for example, share DNA with the Sicilians and the Palestinians. But Sicilians and Palestinians have mutations, or the two populations are not common. People have common ancestral roots, though, to Turkey, but have not much context since. People even living around the Mediterranean today have common ancestors in Turkey, but then the genes diverge into major groups. So this has to relate to, just so you get the idea, modern-day Egyptians, Libyans, Tuscans, Moroccans also. So, and even though they're separate in a sense genetic branches, thus distinct paths, lacking much genetic mingling once they separated from north and south, they still relate to Turkey, and thus the spread of paganism. However, there is some evidence that some of these Neolithic settlements are made in a sense in using volcanic glass they probably got from other islands, showing that they're not only did they move and then stay there, they moved back and forth after they went there. This right here is one of the rooms from the earliest religious built city, where most of the houses have a temple in the house, probably like what we call a living room. So this is their, in a sense, living room. And if you notice, it's hard to see, this is a bear goddess giving birth to three, because there's the three gods, right? So the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. But anyway, so it's giving birth to the in a sense, the bulls, showing that it relates. So you have the bird, the woman, and then you have, bulls. So this is 9,500. By the way, all the rooms are a little bit different, but they all have a similar type of thing. So it's the first religious city from Turkey. This is part of what goes into Europe and some of the other areas, like Egypt. This is another representation, just to give you an idea of the variations they would do, and how it wasn't like they always did it exactly the same, but it's still, there's the bear goddesses again, and then bulls again. This right here is from the same city. I think this relates to the hunting cult. They're not just hunting, they're messing with the animals. And I think that the reason is to prove bravery. So you have them doing stuff like, you see that bear over here? He's pulling on its tail. And then over here you have, another person jumping over the boar. And then you have down here this gigantic bull. You notice this person is really small, but there's a person on top, jumping on top of it. Up here. So it's the same thing. Like even in Crete, the Minoans show pictures of people leaping bulls. But, sorry, Minoans are actually also genetically from Turkey. And it's not a wonder, since they already were doing this behavior 9,000 years ago or whatever. So, another thing interesting too is, I think this represents two kinds of people mingling. Because if you notice, this person is light and dark. And then you have some people that are red, some people that are dark, some people that have different stuff, and they're wearing different clothes too. They're not in a sense not doing the same exact thing. But I still think it all kind of relates to the same behavior. That they're, you notice this is a male they're messing with. And see how it's pulling its tongue? So this is not like just hunting. This is absolutely abusing animals for the probably for the thing I'm tough. But this, like I said, later this becomes a warrior cult. That bravery, I'm brave. It's that mixed with the clan leader cult, which becomes the king. So this is 9,000 years ago in Syria and relates to, it was called the skull cult, which is a form of ancestor worship. This right here is turtle shells with little rocks or things made inside them. And then inside they have little signs on them. So that in a sense they're doing magic, this kind of a thing. These are 8,600 years old. This right here is for sure is a goddess. And sitting on a throne. This is also copied multiple times because it's in a sense, major theme. Once again, to me, all this early stuff before organized religion, it's not like everyone copied the exact thing. But you see this lions and a woman sitting, lions and a woman sitting, lions and a woman sitting. It's a central kind of theme. So this is, in a sense, the veiled goddess, they call it, which is like wearing a veil. And it's 8,000 years old, considered to be one of the oldest in Europe. This right here shows how they moved from Turkey and what time. And so that shows you how they passed, in a sense, these religious ideas at the same time. This right here, once again, is a clan leader, male ancestor sort of thing, totems. And this shows that the different pottery cultures that have a connection, and they're 7,000 to 6,500 years ago. So it was pretty advanced at that point. There were a whole bunch of different styles. So to me, this is the representation of the Balkans, of what I consider the first god. And this happens due to threats of violence. And the reason it's got its hands up is a bull. In a sense, also, that the mouth, because it's probably making sounds like thunder. So it's I think people call this a thinker. No. If anything, maybe that green one could be a thinker, but the other ones are not. But I don't think the other one is either. But so the bent arm is still the bull. I think that the one up is like the beginning, life, and then the one down, death. Possibly. So this also shows how wars created the first male deity, and it's found right there in that culture. And that culture is about 7,250 to 6,500. And the culture is found in Romania and Bulgaria, but these two figurines are found in Romania. But the interesting thing is, I think that she was kicked off her birthing stool. So the male stole the stool or her power, because the power to give life. And him taking that from her, because all these pink representations are all, to me, birthing stools or birthing thrones. And so you can see that the other one doesn't have it, but he does. I think that he's first. I think that he stole it from the female. That's why she's sitting like that. And this right here, these are actually, these first three are probably mother goddesses. And they're like little trunks that you put bones in, like those bones. You put bones in them, or you put items inside of them. And these are DNA shows. These are 6,500 years old, and they're from Israel. And they actually connect to migrations from Turkey or Anatolia and the Zagros Mountains, so Turkey and Iran. This right here shows want, and they come from probably the ideas from Turkey also. They're 6,300 to 6,000 years ago. And the reason I would say it's wood is not just because they didn't have anything else to use, because the handle is actually lead. But the reason I think they use wood is because it connects to the Asher bowls kind of idea that later you see. And this right here shows some pre-Dynastic Egypt figures. The female and the male. The female up in the air with the horns like a bull, and the head like a bird. And to me, when it's up, it's relating in a sense like it's going up to the heavens. And so I think that like the figure having all those notches on it, once again, I think that's a ritualistic reason. This right here is an interesting star that's found in Jordan, and it looks a lot like the later star of Ishtar. And this culture right here comes from up in Turkey and maybe even further into Siberia. Connections. So this right here, I show how that star in corner number 1, it actually relates to a lot of later symbols that all mean the same thing, sort of. So I'm trying to show it all has to do with the night, the moon, and the stars. And it says right here it's a symbol for a deity later in the Sumerian, Mesopotamian religions. So this right here shows in a sense, the 5,600-year-old male figure found buried in grave, possibly male god, artifacts with a mummy that predates the pharaohs. This right here shows the connection to Turkey with their bull worship. And this is bull worship that's found in Egypt, and it's 5,218 to 5,035. And it probably relates to because the First Dynasty is about 5,100. Then we get progressed, organized religion with, like I said, with Egypt. So this right here shows Egypt's language and the bull and how it relates to later language, the connection. It also shows that they started this idea of the hierarchy, and the Mesopotamians go, hey, great idea, I'm going to copy that. Shows that these cultures are sharing. So we're almost done. So religion is just dogmatic propaganda. Forget religion's unfounded myths. I have substantiated archaeology facts. The early hinting of symbolic religious behaviors can be seen 1 million years ago with primal superstition beginning around 600,000 years ago to a greater extent 300,000 years ago. The earliest superstitionizing or sacralizing behaviors to be seen about 100,000 years ago. Clearer behaviors by 75,000 years ago or less, progressing around 50,000 years ago, finally around 13,000 years ago, bends the evolution of organized religion, developing further around 10,000 years ago, finally becoming fuller progressed around 7,000 to 5,000 years ago, forming mythology and its connected dogmatic propaganda. So let's make this clear as I can. All religions and the theorized deities or supernatural elements they support are but a spectrum of accepted, unfounded myths, lies, and institutionalized superstition, as well as some amount of bundled grouping of pseudoscience, pseudo-history, and or pseudo-morality. Therefore, it is no denying religion and faithism, no matter how loved some may be, are profound untruths, or how I see them, just a connected set of dogmatic propaganda. And that's it. Go ahead and, if you have any questions, let me know. Yes, sir.
So how do you know that Jesus didn't plant all those objects you found to test our faith?
Well, if that's his way of doing things, we can certainly not call him loving.
Well,
And since the whole impetus of Jesus is a loving action, to then do that in such an unloving way would be immediately not loving. And like I said earlier, since all the oldest things represent only female and animals, it seems ludicrous to come up with this idea of a male God, Jesus or otherwise.
I heard you depend on the dinosaur bones for that purpose.
Well, I've heard people say they ride dinosaurs, which is also a complete inaccuracy and a misunderstanding. 65 million years ago, no more dinosaurs, so yeah, no humans. Any other questions?
I have kind of an odd question about
Go ahead.
personally.
Okay, personally.
How do you seem to stay so, like, understanding of other people? I know on a lot of stuff I've read, it starts to drive me insane. I'm just like, how can this possibly be happening?
Well,
and with all that you know, I mean, I can't even imagine how you must feel sometimes. It just, it must drive you. I mean, and again, you probably get the same thing.
Well, I'm an axiological atheist, so I'm a value theory atheist. So my whole thing is about what is the greatest good. I do this for education. And everything too is I do realize no one knows this, or very few people understand it, so, or understand even half of this. So the point is, I have compassion. I once was ignorant. I couldn't have, like I said, I couldn't even have told you 5 Christian religions, and I was a Christian. I would have had a hard time. Well, there's Mormons, and Jehovah's Witnesses, and Baptists and Catholics. Yay, I did it. It's ridiculous. There's like 40,000 different sects and denominations in the world just Christian. So I couldn't even scratch the surface of that. If you had asked me even parts of the Bible, although I did read it twice, I read it with the mind that this stuff was real. So I didn't question anything. One thing I started questioning when I read it is, it seems like it didn't go together. I started being uncomfortable that it seemed like it wasn't always worshiping the same God or something, because how they were doing it was so bizarre. How would a God be like this? But I never doubted it. I just thought, well, God's bizarre. They tell me if I don't understand, just believe that God knows what I don't, which is not really an answer. It's amazing, I would say, really, is how I accepted non-answers as answers. In fact, that's one of the things that I do now that I don't see a lot of atheists do. Whenever someone says they believe in God, I go, what do you mean by God? I don't even give them anything. And they go, well, God's a spirit. And then I say, what do you mean by spirit? What's a supernatural? What does he mean by supernatural? I don't know what you're talking about. To me, none of those words have any reality meaning. So if you're going to say they do, you're going to need to prove that. You, not me, have the burden of proof. So I am a strong atheist, not an agnostic at all. And just alone what I know about stuff, I would find almost impossible. I'd be probably brain dead or brain damage to try to believe religion again. Because of what I know is just impossible. But that's just the archaeology. Philosophy-wise, even if I knew none of the archaeology, just philosophy-wise, I couldn't believe. Because I understand the process of good thinking. That's why what I try to teach is not so much just atheism. I want you to get belief etiquette with everything. That means that persuasion of truth, that you have a desire for it, that you know how to acquire it, you know how to identify it, you know how to remove it if you have non-truth. Because a lot of times we accumulate beliefs without thinking. Just think, during the day, there's a lot of people, I hate when atheists go, I have no beliefs. That is a belief that you have no beliefs. Sorry. Psychologically, beliefs are an automatic thing. So I never fight beliefs. I say, are they supported? Are they justified? Are they rational? Can they make sense? And people will say things like, well, you can't say God's not possible. And I go, actually, I can. Because you haven't offered anything that I can understand to the reality of the world. Thus, it takes a reality thing to relate to know possibilities. In other words, could I grow wings tomorrow? The answer is clearly no. And the reason is because we don't get wings. So because I relate a known thing to an unknown is how you can judge things accurately. So I'm a rationalist. I'm not a skeptic, I'm a rationalist. It must follow reason, or I cannot understand it. And if I don't understand it, I neither believe or doubt it. I go, I'm reserving judgment until I understand. Because that to me is the most honest position. It's just to say I'm waiting and I'm going and investigating. Not I'm waiting and I'll never think about it, but I'm waiting and I'm going to think and I'm going to process this. And I generally try to use a way of thinking, a belief etiquette, that everything given to me is open to challenge. Everything I already believe is open to challenge. So, because of that, nothing is sacred. That means even for myself, I'm willing to be wrong if I can be proven, because I would rather learn and be right. And so it's a different attitude to me. But what I do basically is whenever something comes in, I want to make sure that I have a good way of approaching the belief. So when you do belief etiquette, you want to make sure that everything that comes in is tested. And then you have good belief maintenance, which means things you already believe, you better keep checking them. Because you need to make sure, are they still accurate? Are they accurate to the information? Are they accurate to the reality of the world? Because like I said, we accumulate really all kinds of beliefs, some good, some not. And sometimes we have a belief, like you know this is true. You'll have someone do an action, right? Someone will rob someone. 10 witnesses, 10 different answers, or a few different answers. And not like so when we go, well, I saw something, I'm sure. Yeah, you didn't really see it. You may not be sure. You better be open to changing. And so that's something that to me, then that goes back to the honest belief relinquishment. We should be ready at every moment to let everything that we think go. Just a pure honesty for the truth. And so that's what I try to do. And how do I help people? It's a compassion. I see people to me for what they really are. They're a dignity being, just like me. They have a different shell, have a different life, but they're the same. I care about them with a deep compassion for humanity. It's easy because I never stop realizing what I'm doing. I'm trying to teach them. And if I teach them, will I yell? No. How do you teach a child the best? Certainly not punching them in the face. Certainly not screaming at them. It's offering the stuff not as a punch in the face, but as a gift they can unwrap for themselves. I always tell people, I win all the arguments because I don't try to win. I never try to win. I'm not trying to persuade you. I know reason is so wonderful. If I help inspire reason in you, you will do the work for yourself. And that's all I care about. And my biggest goal really is to teach kindness. The goal is to understand the toxic thing that these superstitions bring. But the freedom comes from not that. But not that can't be an anti-that in the fact that I create something toxic also. I want to create something that's not toxic. And so that's why I can talk to anybody. I just have never-ending compassion. That person is valuable. So I've had people tell me to go F myself, and I talk to them for an hour, and they say, you know what, I apologize. It's that compassion. I've learned. A mind is willing to learn when it thinks the person talking to them cares. And so I try to care. Thank you.